I hope this works. Yep, super. So that today we cover project knowledge management, and depending on how we are pushing on, we have as well a little bit a functional look at communication strategies in projects. Yeah. Now, project knowledge, my usual reading again for this lecture. So this time, be aware, Harvey Mailer has in a new edition that will be published end of this year, if you have that. So the ebook is actually out if you're using it from the library. You may have a section on knowledge management. If not, you may not have a section on that. Then I would recommend, well, I have a few recommendations here. It's again, journals versus book. Okay, so knowledge is a little bit more than just pure data and information. So why do we need to know? That's a big question that I want to tackle. And why do we need people that know? Yeah? And that is arguably nowadays you. Yeah? You will be performing in a knowledge economy, and that is when abstraction allows modeling. Yeah? And that is basically what we are after. Yeah? So it's the notion that once you have an idea and you can visualize it in the future, you have nearly achieved of doing it. Yeah. Okay, setting the scene. Why knowing? So this is really a letter that was written by the British Academy in 2008. And it was on the complaint of Her Majesty the Queen in Great Britain, saying, why did nobody see the economy collapsing? Yeah? So this was quite a big thing. And so this is, we are talking here 2008, and Besley and Hennessy, they actually kind of published the brief afterwards. Yeah, so this was very interesting. So they recognized something. Why knowing is maybe so tricky, and why it is actually such a challenging thing. So they summarized, in summary, Your Majesty, the failure to foresee the timing, extent and severity of the crisis and to head it off, while it had many causes, was principally a failure of the collective imagination of many bright people, both in this country, and then they blame other people, and they go in some extent that the economists had mixed messages. Yeah, but yeah, what is the crux here? What do you think is the problem? Is it bad planning? Where did it go wrong? Pardon? Yeah, it goes. So one of the spins that were taken here was one approach that didn't really imagine the worst case could happen. So the causality was actually not quite clear, or the causes were kind of clear. They were actually, if you look into this, yeah, in 2006, 2007, there are a lot of authors, even in project management literature, that already warned for an economic downturn. We will actually have a similar bubble at the moment somewhere else. If you're, I don't really want to spread worries, but maybe something similar coming soon. The point is, we had clear indicators that there is a scenario of a worst case. Yeah, but this was not really planned for. So even the economists that report to the Queen were actually not quite speculating on that. Yeah, so our models and our abstraction didn't actually capture the unforeseen. Yeah. Okay. So knowledge is neither data nor is it information, though it is related to both, and the differences between the terms are often a matter of degree. Yeah, and just to make it a little bit more complicated, just to be very clear, data, information, and knowledge are not interchangeable concepts. Yeah, so when we have a look at that example, or maybe we try it quickly. What is data? What do you think is a typical example where we maybe in project management face data?
The raw figures and numbers.
Yeah, it's a good one. So raw figures and numbers. So in university, where would we face data? Where do you face data quite often? Actually, a lot of you are very keen on that data, it turns out.
Marks.
Yeah, what? Which one? Marks. Yeah. So mark could be data. Yeah. So it's even points for a question. Yeah. The points is the data that we quantify, the information that you give us, and we associate it against the question. But only you know if you know, or if you're just. Now what? We hope you know. Yeah. But it's actually an exchange of information. Yeah. So there is an ambiguity in between. And knowledge is a personal notion. Yeah. This is what you have. Yeah. So you write down information, actually in codification, and then in exchange we give you data for it. Yeah. So that is our trade here. Yeah. Now to come to a little bit more holistic definition, you can see as well the definitions are quite old. So this is a big thing actually. We have been really puzzled the last 120 years actually. This is actually for a long time, but we have made quite a few advances in the last 100 years. And it's actually a very cohesive body, but we are just now starting to do really empiry on this. Yeah? So this is maybe as well an indicator. So knowledge is a fluid mix of framed experiences. What is a framed experience? What does that mean to the individual?
Learn from the senses.
Yeah, so framed experience is you were there then, yeah, and you experienced this through your senses, you're spot on, yeah. So you were part of that situation, yeah. It's your framed experience. If it happens, so here in the class we all have one framed experience now, yeah, all together, yeah. Then we have as well values. So those are of course as well shaped over a lifetime. There may be cultivation aspects there, depending on where you experience that. Then we have contextual information. Yeah, this may be information provided at us. So for example, coming back to the exam, yeah, if I ask you which one is correct, you may put it in the right context and get the right answer. Yeah. And then there's as well expert insight, which kind of is built up on this. So this is the insight where you're looking at something specific. Expert means you have a focus on a particular aspect. Yeah? So as a project manager, you may look at the coordination cost of activities or how you can actually manage it. Yeah? So then you're focusing on a particular element of a project, whilst maybe an engineer looks at it in a different way. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. You have all the knowledge, and you have data. Nobody wants to hear that. Documents, individuals have a feeling that they're not implementing it, so they're not coming as agreements. Nobody listens. Where does the responsibility, in your opinion, lie? Does it lie with the project manager, for example, and he's delivered his or her deliverance, not getting across that?
Yeah, we are talking now about a different topic. It's governance then, yeah? But
What I was relating it to before about the knowledge of how it comes through.
well, we can already go one back here, the values, yeah? So if you have a hierarchy where you have decision makers that claim absolute authority, which by the way in projects is a crazy idea, yeah? Just as a general warning. Yeah, particularly in emergency, you want the capable people to lead with information, to maybe still allow you to make decisions, but if it's a kind of a time pressured situation, you may want the autonomy with a kind of capable team members or organizational unit to respond to. Yeah, so that is actually where governance may get questioned the most. But in certain value structures, yeah, we have a set hierarchy. So this can be on seniority, we talked about that a little bit, or if you have an elected government, they may make political decisions. Yeah? And this is a representation then of the people that they represent, arguably. Yeah? Then you have certain procedures in place. Yeah? And you are quite right. What do we do with the representing parliament for us? If we have the contextual data, what's the issue here? Have they got actually the framed experience with you? You were there, you saw it. you communicate the information that you think is essential. Do they have the framed experience as well? No. They make the decision purely on information. Yeah. So there's an issue as well with that. Framed experience can create as well bias. That's very involving. So in many governance systems, we actually remove that. Yeah, and then we have Russians. Yeah.
You were saying about decision making, you need to make just one more involved. But wouldn't that, for example, if you don't have the whole picture of the project complete picture, the decisions they make might affect some other projects?
Yeah, you're spot on. Yeah. So decisions that are made will impact again in the future framed experience again. Yeah. So this is actually where it comes back to you, to the humans, if you want. Yeah. So if you have an issue, you realize that resources are scarce. People, actually, you have lost a few people on your team, and you're really struggling to hit the times, and it starts getting actually dangerous, for example, in the operational side. Then and you flag that up, and then the decision has been made that there's no resources at the moment, so they will have support in the future, but they want you to push on. This impacts directly. This is a situation where it gets actually very dangerous. Yeah? And this needs close attention. So that there's a responsibility at decision level that may be not visible. So then you have to inform that there are fatigue signs, or again, that depends on your governance structure a little bit. Yeah? In an ideal case, responsibility lies, of course, with a knowledgeable and capable person. Yeah, but we have, of course, different governance structures where we have separated that. Yeah, and for good reasons too. Yeah. Okay, this is normally the framework for evaluating. So all these factors, and you see they're personal. Yeah, this is a tricky thing. There's a human element to this. Yeah, we don't all have the same perception. We may have refined perception due to our past of elements that we can focus for. So this may be as simple as sensorial. Yeah, so creepy inside. I broke some time ago my hand, and I know that I don't feel heat and pain the same way in this hand, and that has led to many weird experiments. But it turns out that the body actually kind of bounces over the time. So I still feel that I'm feeling the same, but I'm actually not. So I have to be consciously careful if there's a heat source. I don't sense it the same way with the left hand as I do with the right. But in my body it feels the same. Yeah? So it's as personal as that. Yeah, to people may not focusing on elements or not being able to make sense of the sensory data that they're actually getting. Yeah, so a sound may be associated with a surprise rather than a warning sign. Yeah. Okay, so that is a personal notion, and it leads to our framework of evaluation and incorporating new experiences and information. This is, of course, what we do. Now, it originates and it's applied in the minds of the knowers. So this is the recognition that we are actually in a body. Yeah? So there are all kinds of creepy philosophic books that you can read on that. That is where kind of the psyche and psychology comes from. Yeah. In organizations, it often becomes embedded not only in documents or repositories, but also in organizational routines. What is that, organizational routines? Can anybody give me an example for that?
The way you run your day or project, Scrum, for example, meeting every morning.
Yeah. Well, what is your organizational routine when you come to university? What do you do first? Do you just arrive in time and straight to the lecture? Or do you arrive early? There are different answers here. There's not one answer, I hope. This would be actually quite creepy. Then we really have one organizational routine. That would mean we are quite normed, actually. But what do you do when you first arrive at the university? Yeah? Different ones? Yeah? Please, yeah? I had answers, but they were set exactly at the same time, so I couldn't actually differentiate.
I said coffee, I said class.
Okay, so you just arrived in time for class, yeah? And your routine is getting a coffee. Yeah? Okay, yeah. So those could be as well organizational routines. Yeah. My favorite one, there's a standardized one in Sweden, which is, what do you do? What is an informal standardized routine that only, I think, Sweden has on that level? I haven't come across other countries that really have the same norming on that. What could I be referring to?
Do you mean fika?
Yes, this is the one. What does that mean?
It's like having a break.
Yes.
In between classes, we always have 15 minutes break. Then you go take coffee or whatever you want to do with the colleagues.
And this goes as well in companies, right?
Yeah. In school, companies.
Yeah. So how is it initiated? Is there a set time?
I don't know exactly, but in school it's called the academic quarter. I don't know the history. I just like it.
Yeah.
Get a break.
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing actually. So it's socializing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen it as well in companies actually. So this is still a tradition in Swedish companies, and it's often used if they get stuck somewhere. Yeah, or if you need a break, if you realize, oh wait a minute, we are too stressed here, we should step away a moment for abstraction. Yeah, so and this is actually pretty impressive. Yeah, I'm as well a huge fan. Whenever I'm in Sweden, I'm as well in. Yeah, so I'm like, yeah. And it's not just coffee. They have as well cookies. Yeah? This is just absolutely amazing. Yeah? In academia, this is the happening of a meeting versus not happening. You have cookies, everybody will attend. Yeah? It turns out. Yeah? But anyway, so organizational routines. So we talked about some informal ones. There may be as well some formal ones. Yeah? So I worked in a engineering company where we often worked in set time slots. So we would have routines of preparing before we would go on site, that we would know the equipment is fit for purpose, and even our machines we would actually test. And then we would arrive on time, and as soon as the time slot would happen, we would actually start building on site. Yeah. So there are different notions, and the routines is how you do things. Yeah. So this becomes for most students, when you go in your first workplace or you change workplace, very visible if somebody says, this is not quite what we are doing. This is not how we are doing it in this company or workplace. Yeah, and those are often the routines to actually working together. So there's a lot of negotiation going on beyond the pure process focus. But here we are at the next one. There's processes that drives that. So how we are reporting, if we actually give information to people and they have to show that they're considering the information. Yeah, so this would be maybe, again, certain responsibility and governance model where you have a process to show that the person that makes a decision has considered all the information. Yeah? Or is there already a filtering? Is there a board of directors that maybe filter it for the decision maker to actually present the decision and reframing it? And with that comes as well practices and norms, and we talked already a little bit about the norms. Is norms clear as well? What is a norm?
Normal standard.
Yeah.
I guess that. Do you need that?
You go the statistical route. Yeah, so it's what commonly is expected. Yeah, simplified. And I think processes and practices we had already. Yeah, so it's quite a heavy one. Yeah, so if you think about it, it's kind of embedded in all those elements and manifests itself of how you're taking part in the organization. Yeah, so it becomes so implicit that is just normal to you. Yeah, this is what you're doing, and that is how knowledge manifests. Now, the memory hook for you to remember what knowledge is, I've used here references where I couldn't find the first reference, which is a little bit worrying. So I'm not sure that Albert Einstein really said that. But Albert Einstein famously observed that knowledge is experience, everything else is just information. And some of his theories were just proven wrong, actually, which is quite remarkable. It has taken us quite some time, 100 years to be fair. And Heidegger had an even more specific one. He's particularly interested because he was very much interested in time. He found a big hook out for us as project manager, so being in time. And that was actually the piece of work he wrote. So he noticed if knowing is at all, so he was even in doubt that there is such a thing as knowledge, yeah, or a knower. It belongs solely to those entities which know. So if you have been there, if you have experienced and sensed it, then you have the insight. But even starting conversing around it or describing it can only be a compromise. Yeah? So you can only kind of refer to the shared experience frame. Okay, so this is quite heavy. Let's actually have a look at the few dilemmas that we have recently experienced, where we can maybe see that. So how do we know we know? And the dilemma, I jump here by the way, two other logical ones. So of course there is how do we know we know, and then there's as well how do we know that we don't know, and then how we don't know that we actually know. And then, of course, there is the unknown, which is a particular dilemma. Yeah? But, of course, the dilemma of not knowing what you do not know is one that really has puzzled us for quite some time. It's not a defense, by the way. Yeah? So you will actually see that you may be still accountable if it goes wrong and if you didn't know what you didn't know. So Polanyi was the first that really kind of tried to put that in a or tried to break it down in a simple dichotomy. He kind of looked at it in terms of explicit and tacit, and this is very interesting when you look at a company. And I talk here of a business that you're working for, then this is an interesting strategy to look at. But I will explain you in a second why tacit is actually not so interesting in project organization, because it's very difficult to capture, and we have dilemmas, particularly when we look at the project organization. So just to make the definitions as well, explicit is know-how that can be described as information depending on cognition. Yeah, so some of us may be more gifted. Yeah, I've told you already, my left hand with heat sensing, I'm not the person you should rely on. Yeah, for example, as an experience on the beach, this morning, I didn't realize that it was actually as cold as other people may realize that quite rapidly. Yeah? So there is that notion. Yeah? Then and then the capability of describing it as well. That's the other hidden dimension. Then you have the tacit, that is an unarticulated, rooted experience and tied to the senses, and that is a real crux that is actually required to make it fully intelligible. So what I'm saying here is that if you follow those theories that have kind of been around for 800 years, then that there's only an information exchange possible. Yeah? And maybe some understanding, but the knowledge, for that you have to go out and see it for yourself. Now that is a big dilemma. And the question is even if we need that. Yeah? Now, a little bit more functional method, and it looks very soft and not so functional actually in this picture, is the famous spiral of knowledge creation. Yeah? And this is from Nonaka and Takashu. I can't say it properly. Takayushi, I think, something like that. Yeah, I take improvements if you have them. They kind of looked at it a little bit differently. They looked at it contextual, how we actually do stuff. And they were very much interested in design. So they looked at how we do products and design as well. Actually, there were as well services. Okay. So anyway, particularly in the design phase, how do we actually create knowledge? So and they noticed that a default mechanism is often, if we have like an initial idea, we start to socialize and maybe try to make it explicit. So it becomes like a little bit an externalization. You engage in a dialogue with somebody else, and you try to make the tacit explicit. And then, well, you can see it goes around to the combination. So this is maybe explicit knowledge with some learned experience. So you try something out, and this allows you to internalize it, which then the internalization is again difficult to come to terms with. But through socializing and trying to make sense of it, you arrive actually at a bigger understanding, and you can externalize a meaningful information that you are creating. Yeah, so this is more or less the loop. to explain the kind of fields that I have here. So socialization was tacit, sharing experience via direct convenience. So this is, for example, the spaghetti challenge. Yeah, although I was in the same room with you, I was not in your team working with you on the spaghetti tower. Yeah, I got a good impression of your facial expression and mimic and gestic and communication, how it went, but it was your spaghetti tower challenge. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. Then we had the externalization. This is tacit to explicit. This is articulating maybe tacit knowledge into explicit concepts. So this is as well alluding that there is actually everything tacit at the beginning. Of course, we use existing concepts then to kind of describe the phenomena we experience, right? So this is actually where we arrive with existing concepts that we have already as a shared basis of language, yeah, of talking to each other, and can actually start describing what you experienced. Yeah, and this was very involving. Yeah, and this is an important thing to note, yeah, that we actually discipline ourselves to certain notions. So describing the full experience is actually quite difficult. Then you have the combination, explicit to explicit. This is structuring concepts into knowledge systems. So we may categorize it. Yeah, we may frame it under certain themes so it becomes more accessible. It's easier to comprehend for somebody that wasn't there in this situation. Yeah? It's a basis of making sense and understanding. And then you have the internalization. That is explicit to the tacit. So you may take the concepts and you come into the situation and you look with these new concepts, new perspectives at the world, and you realize, oh my gosh, he was right. Or maybe the opposite. No, what was he talking about? I don't see any evidence for this whatsoever. Yeah? So that is embodying explicit into tacit operational knowledge. So basically making it work. There as well, by the way, they have even time implications. So they actually recognize that the internalization takes longer and that you should practice. So there are even hidden dimensions to this in their book. Okay. So how does that actually look? I wanted to give you an explicit example before we actually drill down on a few of the tools that we have. So managing knowledge in a project. Now, first encounter, and that is more an emotional thing, it's a very big topic. Yeah, you will see it pretty much everything. It's storytelling, it's non-verbal language. So I just name a few randomly. And if you want to manage something like that in a traditional sense, it feels a little bit like that. Yeah? Sitting in a 3.8 meter sea kayak and watching a 4 meter great white approach, and they have forgotten it's a shark. Yeah, so a great white shark. This is actually in Cape Town. I used to live there. Yeah, this is Fishhook at the background. Beautiful place. I can recommend it. Yeah, and it's a very tense experience. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, he kayaked away afterwards, yeah, the white shark. It didn't happen, yeah, nothing happened. But once you actually start working, so what is the implication of knowledge management? What do you think? What is the challenge? What is the scariness?
Reach the means safely. That's the objective.
Yeah? Yeah, I like the analogy. So this concept worked, actually. So what did you say?
Reach the beach safely.
Yeah? Reach the land safely, yeah? You recognize you are not in home territory, yeah? But there is a hope of getting home nonetheless, yeah? Yeah, okay, I give you the second metaphor as well, just because it's beautiful pictures as well. Yeah, so the second analogy was initially quite scary, but once you get to grips of it, most beautiful as well. Yeah, you realize you can really change the game, and you have a more complete understanding. Yeah, of if you do it right with knowledge management. Now, what is the analogy here? The analogy is with knowledge. There is an implicit notion of trust and translation and taking time to come to understanding, shared understanding, meaningful understanding. Yeah. So here is it combined, if you want. So the concept of project knowledge management is kind of a pretty new thing. It comes kind of from the colleagues from Sweden and Norway. They were really keen on this, although I have to say that knowledge management has been a big topic as well particularly in the UK and America. So, and Japan as well, but they look at it a little bit different. So here you had really kind of the overlap of the knowledge management body of knowledge. Yeah. So this is like an established discipline to what we can do in projects with it. Yeah. That was the recognition that we have a lot of IT systems and information systems, and in projects this is often not working. Actually, we are not really getting it right. People are not using the systems right. Just because somebody clicked something, there's the assumption that they know as well what they're doing. So that was a big problem, and this is where this is coming from. Yeah. So knowledge management in project situations, and thus the link between the principles of knowledge management and project management. With the spheres, the important thing to recognize from that picture is really just that we have very kind of functionally stripped away from knowledge management what we need in projects. So be aware, we are not covering here the whole of knowledge management. It's very functionally adapted to project knowledge management. Now, knowledge as a resource of competitive advantage. So this is actually a theme that we have had for the past 15 years or so. So we have actually created economic mechanisms, and you too will be part of that, where we have accelerated and kind of depoliticized traditional ways of trades and occupations into an open market, more or less. It's not that open actually if you look at it closely, but it has meant that you are actually increasingly competing really on the knowledge intensity of work contents, and the projectification of business gave rise to a need for the management of knowledge in and between temporary organizations. So this is our project. Yeah, so in our projects too, we have very specialized projects that you have worked on, experience on, where you are pre-qualifying to work on a somehow related, maybe parallel project in the future. That is basically the big trouble. Yeah. So what does it look like? To simply, to quickly explain that, so this is creation of project knowledge management in project organizations. So here we have a timeline on the top. So T1 is the past, if you want. Yeah. T2 can be now or the future, depending on how you want to read it. Then we have a permanent organization, and you can see that they run projects. There's project B, there's project A, and those are the temporary organization. Yeah, projects and programs, for example. So you have then, for example, knowledge about the current project. So this is the project number 1. So the spaghetti challenge, this would be me. I understand what the spaghetti challenge is about. I have done it myself. But do I have the project team A intra-project knowledge? So la la. I wouldn't claim so. That is what your team had. Yeah, in your spaghetti challenge, when you were working on your tower, you had the intra-knowledge of your spaghetti tower project. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Yeah. Then there's knowledge between project and parallel. This is the 4. Some of your experiences, when they started looking over to the other table and they realized, oh my gosh, they're on a different height, so there were indicators, information that you picked. And you were knowledgeable to a degree what was going on the other part. But again, this is more knowledge about the current other project. But it's interesting. So this allows us to benchmark and use a few tools that I introduce in a second. So that is knowledge number 4. Then there is as well the knowledge number 5, which is a permanent organization that has some knowledge over project B. Then we have as well the timeline notion. This is kind of knowledge number 3. Knowledge from upstream projects. So this means you have experience. You have worked on the project in the past, and you can now contribute. You have an understanding how it has been built. I've broken it down again, so just to work through it. So 1 was the knowledge about project represents a general overview of knowledge about current and past projects. So this was, for example, me, an external that observed how you build your spaghetti towers. Then the inter-project knowledge relates to the methodology and communication practices within your project. This is how you're making sense, how you're actually kind of creating out of an abstraction a real spaghetti tower with a marshmallow on top. In one case, there was a half marshmallow at the end. Yeah, I should point that out. That is the knowledge about the project that I picked up. Yeah. Then there's knowledge number 3, knowledge transferred from past or upstream project. This is, some of you had actually done the spaghetti challenge slightly different before. Yeah, they had that from the past project, but they now had to apply it in an upstream project, yeah, and deal with that. Yeah. Then you have the 4. This was the knowledge transferred between the current projects. So this were again project A and B. So that was the indicator looking over, for example, to the other one. And then number 5, any knowledge transferred between the temporary project organization and any related supporting permanent organization that may exist. Yeah? So this is an easy typology to actually kind of differentiate it. Where do you think you have the strongest understanding and knowledge? We can do it as well like this. Yeah, please. Yeah.
What is the temporary project organization? What is number 5? Time number 5. The previous slide.
Yes?
Number 5.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. The temporary project organization.
Yeah? It's the B and A. Does that make sense? So it's an organization you are doing for the project. Yeah. So what would be in our spaghetti challenge the permanent organization, for example? Yeah, the rules were actually rules for the project, but permanent organization? Yeah, the university, our group, yeah, our seminar group, right? So permanent organization is, for example, the company that may employ you. Does that make sense? Okay. And temporary organization is the organization you are, for example, delivering the project on. Yes? Okay, so quick question again. Where do we have the best understanding, for example, as project managers? Where do you sit when you have full understand? It's a very knowledge-intense project. You're designing, what do we do? I still like the jetpack. So we have a new jetpack at the moment, yeah. And nobody has done that before, so we're designing a jetpack from scratch. Where do you sit? If you really want to understand how to make the jetpack, and maybe write patents around it and do it all. But where do you do that? I've already alluded here to a codification strategy. Yeah? So patent is, of course, writing it down, but yeah.
Your innovation must be gathered for data and your research and then sensory that you can bring in.
So
previous.
which type of knowledge would you want to be involved in?
I was going for the first one on the left-hand side.
So intra-project knowledge, right? Number 2. This is where you really see how it's been done, right? In the project, if you are there, you are seeing what they are using to actually do the stuff. You have an understanding, comprehension, right? Where's the danger of being biased by the process that you have engaged with? So for example, we have a jetpack. It's not fully stable. Sometimes one turbine is a little bit stronger than the other, which means you are kind of circling a little bit out of control, but it's just for a few seconds. But you have managed it. So where do you may not see that as so risky? Most likely. It's hypothetical. We are all sitting here in the permanent organization, so clearly we are not putting the jetpack on at the moment. So we are quite remote, but where do you think we have the strongest bias? Yeah? Number 2 again, yeah? So this depends, yeah? If our permanent organization is well committed to financial pressures and says we have the relief next week, then we may have created other dilemmas. But normally it's again, the strongest bias would be as well intra-project knowledge, yeah? Because it's so, you have experienced it, you have lived it, yeah? So that is important to realize. That is why the other layers are actually quite interesting. Yeah. Okay, so this is still a lot abstract. Let's break it down a little bit more, that we get to terms with it. So why still project knowledge management? In its simplest form, knowledge management is about encouraging people to share knowledge and ideas to create value-adding products and services. Knowledge will be used for developing new knowledge, ideas, and insights. This is really where it sits. Yeah, and if you want key objectives that particular Swedish and Norwegian guys have filtered it for, it's really a different body of knowledge. You can actually read it against the American and UK literature, which thinks a lot about knowledge leakage. So they come from a patent format, so they're worried that you may spill too much, particularly in joint ventures or big projects, versus the other spin that looks more at knowledge sharing and really creating a collaborative platform. So here, in this one, its objectives for project knowledge management is avoiding duplication of work, learning by repetition, then promoting innovation, of course, innovations at work, so realizing as well what may be desirable to be implemented, and harmonizing of methods and standardizing, which often means as well you have a basis to refine and come up with more tailored, we call it incremental innovations, that kind of improves the product for the user. And allocating resources, of course. So you can as well use it as a benchmarking element. Okay. Knowledge management adapted to project management. So I myself have as well worked a lot in this area. So there's always a danger that I talk too much abstract concepts, and so we have to really come to terms in the seminar with this. So we have very practical application, and I hope they don't make it too implicit. Now, knowledge management processes, this is just a few that have been kind of deemed fit for purpose. And they sit with very different projects. So particularly if you go through it, 2002 kind of concept looks at knowledge being created. So you do something, then you have administration that looks as well at kind of who should be involved, how do we capture it, and who should be having access to this. Then you have the dissemination. So this is actually looking at how applicable this is. And then using it, utilization and productization. So this is the notion that you use this information to tailor as well your process of how you're doing things. Leibowitz had a little bit different spin. So they looked at identification and capture. So they recognized particularly that in many projects where you just work on something, you may solve problems without realizing that you actually have solved a big problem. So it becomes maybe too involving that you actually don't make it conscious. So then you come to a sharing notion. Then they looked at applications, and then again creation of new knowledge. Linde and Wald had a similar idea, so they looked at it more as knowledge generation. Making situation possible where you can generate it. And then again storage, dissemination, retrieval, and then the last one is 2010 as well, is the acquisition and creation, then organization, storage, retrieval and transfer, and presentation and application. And this falls really nearly back into librarianship, the last one, which is quite interesting. So we do actually do the full circle. So for us, if you filter that down, domains of knowledge management, we have sharing of best practice, traditionally, instilling responsibility for knowledge sharing. So a lot of those, you can get a slight feeling that it's nearly a cultural emphasis. You're pleading here your team to do this. So then capturing, reusing past experiences, embedding knowledge in products, services, and processes. Well, how is that possible? Knowledge embedded in products? What does that mean? Why is my mobile phone this size? Why is it not bigger? Yeah?
Your preferences. It's different from person to person.
Yeah, but what do you think the size of a mobile phone is shaped on?
The hand.
Yes. Yes. The prototype is actually tools, yeah, that we used in the past. If you see, most tools are quite easy to take in the hand. If they don't fit this, then your design, if you are supposed to use it with the hand, is falling down. Yeah. So this is actually the embodied knowledge. Yeah. Okay, there are a lot more. Yeah. So it's as well getting into the car. Yeah. Why are we actually sitting down in a car? That's a good question. Yeah. But okay, never mind. So there's a lot of implicit knowledge in products around us. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you want to see how things look different, there are wonderful cartoons that kind of provocatively look at product design, how it can look differently. Yeah. But okay, so there's embedded knowledge in products, services, and processes. Yeah, and that is, of course, as well what we are trying to kind of become aware of. And then producing knowledge as a product, that is particularly if you work in a consultancy as a project management company, that is your game. Yeah. Then driving knowledge generation for innovation, mapping networks of experts. So here it becomes a lot more practical. So you notice actually that it's not just good enough to have a nice repository or a good book, but you want to maybe have as well experts that have in the past worked on different projects. And then building and mining customer knowledge bases. So this is seeing what clients think that they actually want or what they need. And then understanding and measuring the value of knowledge. And last but not least, levering intellectual assets. So, I mean, this is just one list. To give you an example of the last one, so I worked actually in the research and development department from a large multinational, and we had 4 stages of innovations and patent. Well, I'm saying already, so innovations, products that were actually ready to go into production or use. And if we felt that it was a technology that competitors had like kind of developed similarly, or the product was on an equal status and we didn't really have much of an advantage, then we would patent it. And in this particular American company, we had another layer where we knew that the innovation is so advanced that we wouldn't even write a patent down, because then you have to write it down and register it. So we would just write a report and have a double number, so it would just sit within our register but not be published as a patent. So we would not want to actually share this even in a patent form, because we would fear that other engineers, if they read this, or maybe research and development unit people that would have a good understanding, they would get as well the direction in which we had innovations that really advanced our products, that allowed us to have a superior market share. Yeah. So and that is certainly where intellectual assets may sit. Yeah. Now, shall we? Wait a minute. Okay, let's do. I come now to practical examples and talk as well a little bit about the case study. But before we do so, let's take a 10 minutes break, refresh ourselves, and then we have a look at case studies, what I've actually been talking about. Yeah. Okay, so can we have again focus and listening skill a little bit? Otherwise the seminar may go. So just to warn you, we are actually doing another experiment at the seminar, but if you haven't listened necessarily to the meaning of this lecture set, you may get it wrong, which will be very frustrating for your whole team. Just be mentally prepared that it can go. It's an experiment. We will see how it goes. It can go very well. It can go maybe not so well. Yeah. Okay. So we had here domains of knowledge management that have been adapted towards project management, and here we wanted to look as well, before we kind of go in the case study, success of factors of project knowledge management. So why do we actually do this, and where does that sit within our projects? Where does knowledge management actually impact? Yeah, we had a lot of sense-making attempts up front, but it's still very abstract. So, yeah, we are, largely, it's important to recognize that we have done a lot of qualitative study here. There's only one quantitative study from Lindner and Wald that have kind of started counting and looking at repetition of procedures. But here are the broad categories where it impacts on our project. So one dimension is really culture and communication. So a typical example is my German engineering company, where each project manager feels he's a professional. If another project manager asks, hey, how have you been doing this? Then you will get beautiful responses like, why are you asking? Are you not fully qualified or what? Yeah, so there's a culture implication. Whereas in other companies, yeah, you ask, hey, how have you been doing this? And you have a narrative. Yeah, the project manager sits down with you and says, how would you do it? And then you have a conversation going, a dialogue, a sense making. Yeah, you have a learning of what was considered to come to the decision that the experienced guy was doing. And yet you can go through it, and if you're very elaborated, then you may even be able to challenge the ideas with your ideas. Yeah? Then you have a real dialogue. Yeah? But again, this has to do with culture and communication. So things like hierarchy or governance can come in the way, potentially. Yeah, or do you even feel that you can talk to maybe senior staff? Yeah? So this would be an indication. And it shows you as well potentially what culture you have been living in. Yeah? So that's another hidden dimension. Then we have the information and communication technology. A lot of you probably use already Google Scholar. Well, there's a whole network, of course, of how we are now interconnected. You may use WhatsApp with your project management friends. Like, I have a really wicked problem. Has anybody come across this? Yeah, so there's a direct communal aspect, or you may do it with professional networks like APM. They have as well discussion groups like that. And they recognize as well organization matters. So are you all dispersed as a project manager actually with a delivery team or the design team together? Or is it done remotely? Yeah, so there are a lot of organization implication as well in terms of organizational order, organizational structures, and organizational routines. We had a little bit to look at that. They recognize as well methods. So we actually have a comprehensive list later on of methods that I have found in the literature and that I have kind of researched. There are certainly new ones, new emerging ones, or hybrids that have been adopted. But again, they have as well the methods in it. Then another qualitative study simplified that. They just said like that is the people notion. You can't just say culture and communication. There's as well skills, but arguably this sits as well within culture, and so they spun it a little bit different and defined it differently. Then instead of ICT, they came to technology tools. Yeah, so they recognized as well that there is. So they recognized as well technology as a meeting. Yeah, calling a meeting. So let's all sit down around the table. It's as well a technology. Yeah? I know many people don't see it that way, but it's a technology of meeting, yeah? Sitting down and sharing ideas. Yeah? Or you can do it as well standing in the kitchen, for example. Yeah? Then last they had the processes, and as well Lindner and Wald, they came to similar ones. They had culture and leadership, so they picked up this hierarchy notion that I mentioned. Then they looked at ICT systems, and then they had a look at organization and processes. And last one is kind of what I have done with Volvo for quite some time, and we published that with one of the MSc students, Teresa Johansson. This was actually, I shouldn't really admit that, so the Volvo guys were heartbroken. They wanted to have Teresa, and with the study, she met actually her new company she really wanted to work with, so that was a dilemma. But yeah, anyway, so we kind of came to the notion of culture, technology, and processes, so we took the technology a little bit broader than just ICT, because we realized that information and communication technology is one side, but the soft ways of like having a kitchen where you meet for fika, is that how you say it? Yeah, yeah, okay, fika. So that were as well mechanisms of storytelling and meeting, which are very powerful technologies, and create a culture of sharing. Yeah, okay. So success factors, if you want to implement something like that, is organizational culture, and this is shaped by beliefs, values, and practices of a group or groups within the organization. So we have as well subgrouping. So you can often spot that in canteens. This becomes very visible. Yeah? If there's a clear organization going on, then you have often groups going on within groups. Then the information technology. So the support by information technology tool has proven to be necessary but not sufficient factor for the quality of project knowledge management. And here in particular, technology that is intelligible to the project team, that everybody can use it. Yeah, so this is actually one of the things that you probably developed or that you experienced in your team work. Yeah, you came as well to a recognition which communication or ICT tools can be used to share information, to communicate. Yeah? And then last but not least is the processes. Easy to use standards and processes should be chosen on purpose since the aim is an easy usage with as little as possible additional effort. So the recognition in projects is in knowledge management, yeah, we can have a library, we can have a huge database, but in projects, it's very unlikely anybody will look at it if it takes longer than 15 minutes to go through it. It's not that bad, yeah, but there is a notion, if it's complicated and too holistically structured and not focused on the project needs, then we see very often that it's not used. Yeah? Okay. So techniques of knowledge management and the application and the management of projects. So this was a piece actually that we did for Volvo. I should really say this we had 5 MSc students working on it and 1 postdoc. So very simplified, this came to knowledge sharing behavior recognition, and we looked as well at key success factors. So in knowledge, we have simplified this here. It's of course a dialogue, but you have a contributor and a receiver. This is the role that you have for information or communication exchange, yeah, and being as well part in the knowledge sharing. And then you have the personification strategy and a codification. What is personification? What do you think? It's a weird term from knowledge management, clearly, but what does it mean? Personification. Yeah, this is actually literally what you would probably find. It's a notion that you are willing to adapt your style to answer to somebody directly. Yeah, so it's asking a person, yeah, talking to each other. Does that make sense? Yeah. So in a case of a project, that would mean, for example, somebody has worked on the project. I may phone him up and say like, "Hey, how did you do this?" Yeah. So mode of phone, yeah, ICT. I know it doesn't look obvious, but and then talking to each other, yeah, because you know that this guy has insight. Codification is you write a report. Afterwards, lesson learned. Everybody writes a report and says like, "This was good." Yeah, so this could be one way of dealing with it. So again, and we did it with culture, process, and technology. So this just to make it a little bit simpler. So this led to our theorem here that we used from the literature. So codification strategy can be used as a project memory system. Yeah, this is traditional and new information and communication technologies. So this is, for example, so codification, again, the idea writing down or capturing, recording, filming. Yeah, this is all an option. And nowadays, a lot of short movies are made, and as well photos are taken. I see this particular in design project where they look at applications. So then you have documents, databases, and emails with a project memory system. Yeah, and this should really fit your project. Yeah, so in your cases, some of you use Google Docs as a database, yeah, or Dropbox. So there are different strategies here between you. Yeah? Then you have the project memory, that is explicit, declarative knowledge. So this may be specifications, requirements from clients, instructions, definitions, compliance documents, things like that. Yeah? And here we are back. I don't know why I've swapped that. That was really confusing. I should have kept it the same order. So then the personalization strategy, this was again the personal one. So a project memory system would be memory representations, personal interactions. So this be mental models, dialogues, workshops, seminars, inviting people that have worked on it. Yeah. And then we have the personalization strategy and project memory. That kind of comes to tacit and procedural knowledge. This is competencies, values, norms. So figuring out how you have done that. It's as well routines. So how you routinely actually deal with something. Habits. So what is a habit? Yes. Yeah, it's a notion that you repeat an activity without thinking much about it, but it's quite functional. Actually, if you really look at it, we cope like this 80% of our life. Yeah, so that is just an observation. Yeah. Okay, so then you come kind of to knowledge sharing mechanisms. So this is you analyze basically the company. And so this is institutionalized, what is at organizational level, and then you look as well what the individuals do. Yeah? So and then you come to then you can categorize it in the organization. So quadrant number one is individualized personalization mechanisms. So this is individual networks. You know? So we noticed, for example, in Volvo that there were some project managers that had a super network. If they had a question and they couldn't find it out, they would ask a friend. And maybe the friend wouldn't know, but their friend would know who maybe knows. Does that make sense? Yeah? So I actually have it visualized in a second. So that was the network idea. So you basically look for this. Yeah? You look how people actually deal with it, and then you can map out, and then you can introduce new mechanisms. And then the company suddenly performs a lot better. Yeah? That is a mind-blowing thing. So then personalized, institutionalized. Institutionalized means at organizational level in terms of norms, yeah, that you actually see. So here we had provide access to experts. So Volvo works very close with university consultancies. Actually, they have their own innovation units, and so that was actually quite impressive. They have a lot of institutionalized mechanisms because they've realized automotive is very much innovation and technology driven. Yeah, you have to be on your toes. Yeah. Then codification strategy, we had, this is individualized codified. This was things like documents produced during the project and stored on individual hard disks, are transferred often through social networks, email or USB sticks is often the format, yeah, or a written plan, not to underestimate. Then institutionalized mechanisms was databases and repositories. They had as well a wiki, so actually quite advanced stuff. Company wiki. Does that make sense? Wiki, like Wikipedia, just only for your company, yeah, instead. Yeah. Okay. So we had because we were curious, we wanted to follow kind of Bo's theorem. He said that there is as well a question of geographical dispersedness. So this means, are they all in the same room, or are they distributed? Are they even working in other companies, different localities? So then we had as well a look at what were actually the problems. Were they unique to the project, or is it the problem that repeatedly emerges and they just haven't had themselves this? And discovered the first time as an individual. So here is how we broke it down. Unique versus small and co-located. Yeah, so this means you are kind of all on the same side. Yeah? So you may actually go to the same problem. You stop, for example, on your design process and say, hey, wait a minute, we have a problem, let's have a look. Yeah? And that was most suitable for individualized, personalized mechanisms. So this goes back on the former one, and then we had different methods that we can match against it. Then we had as well large and geographically dispersed. This was like different business units. They work a lot overseas as well with other brands, where their supply chain really. Yeah. And here we had most suitable for institutionalized personalization mechanisms. So did you remember which ones they were? So this was providing access to experts. Yeah. This is how you basically come to that. Does it make sense? Yeah. And quadrant number 1, personalized mechanism, individual ones. So that was the one where you have an individual network. Yeah? You come together and try to solve it. You use knowledge management mechanisms that are basically suitable for that. Then you have standardized problems, yeah, but they re-emerge. You have a new team. They may solve it differently, actually. Then individualized codification mechanisms. So again, here you have then the example of individuals may have had the problem solved in the past. So then you want to go back and ask them, hey, can you send me that file, how you did it? Yeah, something like that. And then we had the standardized but large and geographically dispersed. And here we had as well the use of the databases, repositories, and wikis where they can basically create as well the content. So this is basically the underlying mechanism, and then you can map it out. So the knowledge sharing behavior, this is just an example. I mean, we mapped that basically over more or less a year. So it was 3 different students that largely worked on this in the company. So traditional dilemmas would be that knowledge sharing behavior would be something like this. So wait a minute first. So the codification, you would have a report written, yeah, by a past team member. Yeah, the contributor like, oh, we have learned this, let's write this down. And then the receiver would be like, oh, who did this again? And then there would be that dilemma, hey, you have to read my report. It's a little bit like us academics, we write a paper and we are like, hey, read my papers. Yeah, and everybody's like, no, just tell me. I don't want to read your paper. Yeah, so the classic dilemma. Yeah, so this is a dilemma. Do you see it? Yeah, is it visible? Yeah, it's not matching the strategy. Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah, okay. I hope you see it. Yeah. So how did they do it then? So knowledge, the receiver is normally there are different strategies. So this is actually what we observed. Blank sheet approach. What is that? What does that mean? Yeah, ignore it. Yeah. This is really a problem. Let's see. Somebody else will figure that problem out. Yeah. You do not much about it. Look for internal written material. Yeah, then we had as well ask colleagues. Yeah, and then search externally. Yeah, that was as well favored. And there was a ratio. I mean, this is not proportional. Actually, we didn't really quantify it a lot. So we just had those, and we knew that certain individuals actually preferred that. But a blank sheet approach, quite frankly, in some cases you should be fired for that. Yeah. So. Find internal written material, hard work sometimes, yeah, depending on how well it's categorized. Ask a colleague, that is often very tempting. Yeah, it's a preferred strategy, and often leads to a benefit straight away. And searching externally, yeah, particular younger generations are very keen on Google and related search engines, and it's as well quite fruitful. You would be surprised. So in this example, the best strategy was ask the colleague, because this is what the person was after. So the matching the contributor and receiver is the whole point of these strategies. Yeah? You create mechanisms that actually follow it. So either you kind of train receivers to look for codification strategies, yeah, that are appealing to the project. This means you have to basically find a way of matching them. Yeah, so it's a push system. So why does that actually make sense? Pull and push? Why does a receiver have to push for that? That is confusing, isn't it? Wait a minute, I go back. So this is where we were. So receiver is pulling. What does that mean? Yes. So the receiver has realized, I don't know. Rubbish. What can I do? Sorry, apologies for the swearing. Yeah, so you noticed. You need to know. Yeah, but there is nobody that is willing to tell you about this. So then, easy fix is you have to basically push for material in that area. Yeah? You have to recognize that, hey, there's nothing written down, and you may yourself become actually the starter of this lesson learned in that area. Now, another idea would be to actually match, of course, the push mechanism, yeah, and actually pull in So this is the personification. Before it even comes to the receiver asking about it, you recognize that the project has similar characteristics, yeah? And you invite basically previous people that have worked on it and can talk a little bit about how they have managed contextually, yeah, the aspects of the project lifecycle. Yeah? Okay, both worked in the end. So the example came down to something like this. So in some networks we realized that so particular new project managers in Volvo that hadn't yet had the full network distribution. So they do as well a scheme that you work in different departments, so you get an oversight of the company, and then of course enlarges your network. But we had often the situation that they were actually kind of testing on a iterative basis. So hey, do you know? Oh, I don't know, but maybe ask him, and then maybe ask her, and then eventually they found a contributor. But in many cases, they went actually on a dead track, and they found like, oh, I don't know, I don't even know who you could ask. Yeah. So that was kind of a dead alley, and there were many cases even where better contributor was actually out of the network. So this is of course a problem. So how do you get there directly? That was a big question. So we mapped it out. Techniques for knowledge management. So yeah, those were the answers. Yeah, they come from the literature. So forming communities of practices. This was actually the one that we recommended for the young project managers. What do you think is that? A community of practice? Are we a community of practice? People are worried, what could that be? Yeah, we are a community of practice. So it's basically a grouping. It can be in forms of meeting, where you encourage storytelling to actual problems that you're facing. Yeah, so you propose an agenda, and then you hear how you're planning to do it, and you share basically your ideas. Yeah. And it's a set process, and the idea is as well that you have soft mechanisms. So if you're new and you're not quite confident, then you get a mentor, somebody that is experienced, that is matching you, and you can work shadow as well if you want to get an understanding of how things have been done. So there are underlining mechanisms for these techniques. Yeah. Then we have as well creation and utilization of knowledge databases. So again, I've given you as well the papers if you want to look at any particular one. Incorporations of lessons learned into strategies. This is as well quite hip topic still in project management. We should really look at different mechanisms as well, but that is still where we are stuck in project management. Brainstorming sessions. Yeah, some of you have experienced this. Hopefully, all of you. Then establishing knowledge maps is an interesting one. Yeah? So mapping experts out and people that have worked on the network. Very easily done, often underrated. Yeah? It's very powerful actually. Performing knowledge audits is a little bit more tricky. Benchmarking, usage of rewards, sharing through motivation, storytelling. Those are already soft approaches that actually repeat themselves, for example, in communication of practice. Yeah? And there's a lot more. So cross-project learning through knowledge transfer and people transfer. So at university, we do a lot of knowledge transfers with companies. Then after action reviews for the formation of best practices or good practices. I don't really like the term. But then knowledge fairs, for stakeholder involvement, using collaborative technologies, groupware, and by means of social software, we had a few there that we actually kind of recognized. Yeah. Then other techniques that we didn't have actually in this particular case was delegating designations such as knowledge workers. So this is actually very advocated in a lot of multinationals at the moment. And CKOs, or sometimes as well chief information executives, so or officers. It's as well a new term. So NASA, for example, has one. He sits as well on the IPMA, and he is often it's worthwhile talking to him if you go to the conference. Then knowledge brokers. This is individuals acting as a reference for information on specific topics, fields, or subjects. Quick question. In BIM, if you have a BIM coordinator, what is he? That is a question for people that are interested in construction potentially. But just to have a look, where do you think do they sit?
Knowledge broker.
Yes, potentially knowledge brokers. Yeah, there are actually a few answers here. This depends how BIM is handled. If each team member is fully able to contribute to its full extent to the BIM model that you are using, then we have a different model. Yeah, then we have the knowledge workers. But this is often not how a lot of UK companies at least run it. Yeah, so we have knowledge brokers as one person actually filtering in the information. Yeah, so he or she is already interpreting from all these subdisciplines to their understanding into that model. Yeah.
I guess in the UK what we tend to use is consultants rather than anything else.
Yeah.
Buy in the knowledge.
Yeah, so this can be within the organization, this can be externally.
Yeah.
So here again, this is for the project organization often. Yeah, this is as well if you have a consultant as a project manager and you don't have your in-house project manager, it's the same idea. Yeah. Yeah. Now you can use it as well as a mapping tool. So this is another study that we have done. I mean, I have to admit we have actually anonymized that. This was done for the Ministry of Defense. So it's extremely abstracted, but just to give you an idea how you could use it, we identified key risk areas in the. This didn't come from us; they had identified it themselves. From analysis of past projects, campaigns, and programs. And the problem was unavailability of information. Now, they have actually a lot of assets there that they use, and agency, but yeah. So the knowledge management toolbox that we kind of presented them with were knowledge maps, intellectual assets use. By the way, that goes a long way with the MOD. I didn't realize that, but it was actually quite mind-blowing. So then cross-project learning, then past experiences, best practices, and brainstorming. Yeah, often underrated, but if you do the process properly, then you have actually a good idea. And you can actually then reduce the risks, yeah, straight away, which is quite mind-blowing, yeah, impressive, yeah, if you do that properly. Other ones was absence of defined context. Yeah, so there was a, yeah, it was changing actually. The more information came in, the context was adjusted. So here again, we had knowledge fairs, PESTEL analysis, very simple, knowledge embedding, smart analysis, best practices, and knowledge workshops. So inadequate information flow. Yeah, there was a question of rewards. Yeah, rewards goes, by the way, both ways. Yeah, so there's in the UK we use an analogy, the carrot and the stick, and it's an analogy that normally has to do with motivating a donkey to pull something behind it. So donkeys don't naturally. So they have as well their mood swings. Donkeys. That was, I think, the bottom line, and the motivation was either to hang a carrot in front of them, or and just far enough away so that the donkey tries to reach and actually moves forward. Yeah, that was the idea. Or the other terrible metaphor, yeah, was giving it a little bit stick, that it's again motivated to walk. Yeah. Okay, so that is where the metaphor is coming from. So rewards go both ways as well. Yeah. Okay. Then actually, if you're really no, I shouldn't maybe go too deep there. But then there's as well after action reviews, of course, lesson learned. Communication, communities of practice. This was again what I emphasized up front, which was as well used by the Volvo innovation unit. And then storytelling and knowledge databases. And this is again to basically inadequate information flow. Lack of framework of reference. Again, a few, you can look at those as well in your own time, then in a little bit more depth. Ineffective linkage systems. This is actually quite an interesting one because, yeah, in a way, I see that as well in a lot of teamwork in the group work. And this is as well a challenge. that a lot of you face in your teams. Yeah? I'm sure a lot of you have already adopted some implicitly. So embedding information that is actually meaningful. Then knowledge and broker, maybe somebody is actually organizing that or has a chief of knowledge officer. Maybe a knowledge audit. Yeah, some of you have done that actually. Asked who has worked on what before. Then maybe consult with knowledge workers. So a lot of you are studying it actually, yeah, and probably fall in that category. And then collaborative technologies is of course the other one. And then last but not least, knowledge maps. Yeah. So yeah. I wanted to leave you with a key perspective of what knowledge can enable you to do. And again, it's an analogy before we actually figured out in our seminar ourselves. I hope the tone is not too loud. Otherwise, this may be a very loud and painful experience. Actually, we don't really need the sound. I hope this works. Okay, let me just... Okay. 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 There are big lessons to be learned, yeah? I leave it with that for now, with knowledge management. Next week we look at communication, so it will be very concrete in comparison to the abstract overview. But again, in the seminar, 3 o'clock, yeah, Wayne Jones, 103, for the group that normally starts at 4. And no lectures and seminars of sustainability this week, yeah? Okay, thank you very much.